Hello folks. Well, you're going to be spending a lot of time playing with Bash and Linux over the next couple of years if you stay in the program. So it kind of helps to configure Bash the way that you like, to start developing aliases that work well for you, to start developing scripts that help you out, to start setting all the different preferences to things that you actually like. So today we'll just get started with that and give you kind of the groundwork so that you can explore further on your own. But I want to take a look at some of the key files that are useful for customizing your account. So I'm going to flip back and forth between kind of the discussion that we have going on here and some quick examples on a student account so you can see what this actually looks like in practice. So I believe that we've mentioned earlier that hidden files in our system are represented as dot files. So the name begins with the dot. So a lot of the configuration files that we look at fall into this category of hidden files. So they're named dot whatever. So we're going to look at .bashrc today, .bash aliases, .history. There's going to be a whole slew of others. So if you recall, if you just type in ls, it doesn't show you the hidden files and hidden directories, but if you use ls-a, it will show you these. So let's just take a quick look in home directory here. So if I just do ls, it shows me what I've got in my home directory. And if I do an ls-a, it shows me the hidden files and hidden directories as well. So it shows me dot, the current directory, dot, the one above. It shows me all the regular stuff. And then you see all of these other files floating around. So things like .nano and .ssh and .vim that are configuration directories, or they contain directories containing configuration for different programs. Or you'll see things like .vimrc or .viminfo that again are configuration files for a particular program. But the ones we'll take a look at first are these few. .bashrc, which is going to get run every time we log in, and so it can contain a bunch of customized configuration information for what we want things to look like when we log in. .bash history contains a record of the most recent commands that you've run, and I believe earlier we looked at things like using exclamation mark in some pattern to rerun some command that we've run recently. So this is where that information is stored. Or .bash logout, a set of commands that we can have run automatically when we log out, right? Kind of the opposite of .bashrc, right? Bashrc for the stuff we want to happen when we log in, and then the .bash logout for things that happen when we want to log out. So today we'll take a look at what's in some of those and how we can customize them a bit. Since I've got the potential to break things when I do this, maybe what I want to do first is to let's create a directory for my I don't know, original dot files. And so what I'm going to do is just copy my .bash whatevers into my original dot files. So here I'm saying everything that begins with the .bash, copy into this directory, and inside that directory give it the same name as it's got right now. Right, so now if I do an ls-a on my original dot files, I'll see that I've copied all those things in there. Just in case I manage to break something here, I've got the originals that I can restore later on. All right, so assuming we've got these available to play with, let's continue on to our discussion here. So again, the .bashrc, run when you log in. The history, recent commands. Aliases, wasn't there yet. We'll create one in just a second. So the .bash aliases contains aliases for commands that you like to use, and then the logout for stuff that you want run whenever you log out. So .bashrc is probably the most interesting one, and it contains the defaults for a lot of different environment variables. It'll also check and see if we've got a .bash aliases file, and if it finds one, then it runs it. So we'll take a look at that in just 1 second here. Earlier in one of our sessions, we mentioned the idea that we might want to create a bunch of bash functions of our own and have that file automatically sourced so that when we log in, it gets sourced. All those functions are available to us from the command line. One of the ways to get that sourcing to happen automatically when you log in is to put a little chunk like this at somewhere down in your, maybe towards the end of your bash file, your bashrc file. So you say, if this file exists, the one that's got your weird and wonderful bash code in it, then source it. And of course you could have paths in here that say, look in, I don't know, my library of stuff for this particular file. But you can go through and add things like this to the end of your bashrc. So we'll take a look at some snippets that look like that in just a second. And in the bashrc, you'll find settings for a whole bunch of default values. So bash uses a lot of different environment variables to keep track of how you want things done. So you can set a path that determines where bash looks for programs when you type in a command. You can set what your prompt looks like. You can set the number of commands the history keeps track of. You can decide which editor you want invoked by default and which pager, which file viewing program you want by default, what compiler you want it to use by default. Lots and lots of different environment variables. So let's quickly just take a look at some of this. I believe if we just type in env, it'll give me a list of my current environment variables. Yeah, so if I just type in env, you get this giant mass of everything that's set by default for you. Any of these things you can change in your .bashrc, as we'll see in just a second. So we'll see default settings in here for what my login name is, for what shell I want to use, for well, actually no, some of these things I can't configure. That's not quite accurate. The color settings that I'm using, and all sorts of different things that can be configured. All right, so let's clear this a little bit, and I wanted to take a look in my bashrc and see what's there now. So you'll see that the default bashrc has got a bunch of comments in describing what's going on, so you can take that as sort of guidelines. Case statements, actually, we haven't talked about case statements in bash, but it is essentially like a switch in some other language or case in some other languages where you're just checking for a bunch of different possibilities. You'll see, again, comments describing what some of these settings control, history sizes, file sizes, checking for window sizes, lots of different things that you can configure, but we're pretty much going to ignore right now. How to set the color settings for your terminal. Again, lots and lots and lots of stuff in here. Checking if some particular variable is set, what do we do about it? Checking the terminal type, and based on the terminal type, how do we want to set our prompt? So all sorts of weird and wonderful settings that can be played with. And I'm not going to go into details on all of this. This is something that you can go through and explore, do some Googling, see what kinds of things you can customize. I mentioned this concept of checking for a file to see if it exists, and if it exists, then run it. This is an example here where it's checking to see if there's a bash aliases file in the current directory, then run that, so we use the aliases. And we'll talk about aliases in just a moment. Let's see. So, all sorts of different things that can be set and configured. And again, we'll play with some in just a second. Let's see. Where did I want to go here? So with these environment variables, you can configure them if you want to inside that bashrc. So the way you do it is by picking the variable that you want set and then assign it a value. So you would, if I want my default editor in in bash to be the Vim editor, then I can set, okay, I want my editor to be /user/bin/vim, so the location of the Vim program that I want to use, and then the semicolon, and specify that I want that setting exported so that it's used globally once this once the .bashrc is finished running. So we're going to you can go through and customize any of the variables that are available to you, any of the environment variables, using this kind of a format, right? So essentially you would just be putting this line somewhere in your bashrc so that that variable is then set. And again, typed in env just a moment ago to specify, just to see what is currently set. And yeah, lots of the variables haven't been set by default, but you can add them. So yeah, if you do some Googling, you can start looking at what kinds of variables exist out there that you can start configuring. Now the path is a really interesting one. So did we have our path in here? Yeah. So let's just show you this. In that list of environment settings, we notice that one of the environment variables is the path. And this specifies where bash looks when you type in a command. If I type in, foo or ls or pwd or whatever my command might be, then bash is going to go through and look in these different directories to see if it can find the program that carries out that command. So first it's going to look, for me at the moment, it's going to look in the directory user local bin, right, starting from the root, and see if it finds the program there. So for instance, if it's looking for ls, it might look for ls in there. And if it doesn't find it, then it moves on to the next one and looks for it in user bin. If it doesn't find it, then it looks in bin. If it doesn't find it, maybe it looks in user local games. So it's got this collection of locations that it looks for, this collection of directories that it searches looking for the command that you just typed in. If it doesn't find them anywhere, and it's not something that's built into bash, then it says, no, sorry, command not found, and it doesn't know what to do. Now you can customize this to say, okay, I also want you to look in directories X, Y, and Z aside from these ones. So you can modify your path variable either from the command line or in the .bashrc to add extra stuff. You can also, you can pick where it belongs in the ordering. So before you check this, I want you to check this other directory that I've got in mind. Or after you check in /bin, if you don't find it there, I want you to. So I can start inserting extra directories in here. And if you look at the syntax, you'll see that they're paths, absolute paths, separated by colons. So we can go through and start tweaking our path when you're doing this. So add whatever you like. There are some things to watch out for there. Obviously you want valid directories, but there are things that can be particularly risky. If in your path you add somebody else's directory in there, so you say, oh, my buddy has this great program in their bin directory or something like that, so go check in their directory for a command that I want to use. The risk there is that if they happen to put something that's buggy or nasty in that directory, say they put something nasty named ls in there, or just buggy named ls in there, and you type your ls command and it winds up looking in their directory and finding it and running that, then whatever nasty or buggy behavior it's got is going to happen to you. So there are risks in adding other people's content to your path. Right? The default path that's set there is for system directories that are pretty trustworthy. But you do want to think long and hard about what else you're going to add to your path. The other thing that you'll see people adding to their paths at times that also carries a risk with it is the dot that represents the current directory. So you'll have noticed that when we're running programs in a particular directory, we'll often, or scripts, we'll type // and then the name of the program or the name of the script. So if you add dot to your path, then you don't have to keep typing this // and the name, because it's going to look in the current directory to see if there's something in the directory that you're in right now that's got the command that you're looking for. So it's a little bit more convenient than always typing // whatever. But if you do this, you want to make sure, absolutely sure, always, 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 that the dot is put at the very last position in your path, not anywhere before that. And the idea is that, for instance, if you put dot in the front of your path, and take the extreme case, so it's the first place that it checks when looking for a program. Again, if you wind up in somebody else's directory somewhere and they've got a nasty or buggy ls and you type in ls, the first place bash is going to look is in the current directory, find their nasty broken one, and run that. So if you ever do add that dot to your path, you want to make sure it's the very last thing in the path. So just a couple of words of warning. But you can go through and start customizing your paths. So the other thing that we were mentioning was the aliases and bash aliases. So there are times when there are long commands that you want to use all the time. So maybe I've got directory upon directory upon directory upon directory, and just about every day when I come in and I want to do something, I wind up doing a cd deep down inside that directory. So maybe I want to set up an alias so that instead of having to type out the entire path to get down there, or instead of working my way through one CD at a time to the right location, I'll create an alias. It's kind of a shortcut to jump to that particular directory. So the way you do it is by using the alias command, the name of the shortcut you want to create, the equals, and then in single quotes, what the full version of the command is going to be. So if we try this, the alias, bash 265 to mean cd to in my home directory in csci 265 in examples the bash directory, then from now on all I have to do to jump straight to that directory is type bash 265. Right? It's creating a name for a short version of this command, an alias for this command. So let's give that a try. So we'll just sorry, a brief technical challenge here for a second. There we go. So we'll give this a try. Let's get rid of some of this rubbish so things are a little bit clearer. So we'll try alias bash 265 equals cd / home / and this kind of assumes that you actually have a directory named this in here. csci 265 / examples / bash. I hope I got that path right. So I've created this alias. And so from now on, if I type in bash 265, no such directory. Okay, where are we? ls csci 265. Oh, I don't have any examples. Okay. Sorry, let's redo that and get the name of the directory right. So I've created this alias that will jump me straight to my 265 / bash directory. So let's give that a whirl. Bash 265, and it jumps me straight to that directory. So again, you're just creating a short name to save you from typing in a long command. So I can put that inside a .bash aliases file. So let's go back to our home directory here, and let's create .bash aliases file. And in there, we'll put exactly that command, alias bash 265 equals cd / home / student / Dave stew / csci 265 / bash was, I think, what we used. So the next time I log in, if you recall in my bashrc, it had that chunk that checked to see if I've got a .bash aliases file. If I do, then run it. So the next time I log in, it's going to run that .bash aliases file, which is going to find the alias that I just stuck in there and create it for me. So from now on, every time I log in, I can just type in bash 265 anytime I want, and it will jump me to that directory. So again, anytime you've got kind of long, awkward commands, often things like print commands have got some annoying combination of options that you want to be able to use. So you can create aliases or shortcuts for them. Not something that you have to do, but the kind of thing that can make your life less painful as you're grinding your way through the next few years. All right, what else did I want to mention? I pointed out way back at the beginning of this that in your home directory, you'll see things like a .vimrc or a .ssh that might be a directory or might be a file that has got customization information for specific programs. So again, in those, you can often look at the contents and customize the settings for that particular program. So this idea of configuration files being in hidden files named .whatever is pretty common for the Linux world. Again, if we take a look in that home directory, we had a vimrc, didn't we? ls-a. Yeah, there was a vimrc in there. So if we take a look at what's in that, just as an example, again, you'll see lots of customization information and settings that you can use. So it's largely a matter of Googling and finding interesting settings that make things the way you like it, or looking around at things that you see other people doing and other people using and going, oh, hey, that's cool, how do I do that? And then they show you the settings to use, and you wind up evolving an account configuration that really works well for you. So it's the kind of thing I would recommend experimenting with. Again, it is possible to break your configuration files, in which case, they crash halfway through whatever it is they're running and the last half of it doesn't work. And so it is a good idea to make a backup of them first so that you can restore it if you happen to break something. But I do strongly encourage starting to explore what you can do to make things work better for you. All right, we will leave that there for now.